Welcome back to the Practical People Manager podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by employment lawyer Nic Elliott, Head of Employment at Actons Solicitors, who also brings a really interesting perspective as a HR director within his own firm. This is the first part of our conversation, and we start by looking at why employment law is becoming such an important issue for line managers, not just HR teams or legal teams. Nic shares what he's seeing in practice, including the rise in grievances, tribunal claims, AI-generated complaints, and the impact of the Employment Rights Act. It's a really practical conversation, especially if you manage people, you support managers or run a business, and you want to understand what's changing. Let's get into part one with Nic. So welcome, Nic.
Hello.
How are you?
Really good, thanks. You?
Good, very good. Thank you so much for doing this podcast.
It's a pleasure.
Very excited. I've got loads of questions.
I can see.
I'm very prepared. I mean, there's so many things to ask you, if I'm honest with you. An employment lawyer with all your experience would be amazing. So let's start with that then. What about a bit of an introduction to our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, so I'm Nic. I head the employment team at Actons Solicitors. We're based in Nottingham. We work with clients all over the UK. We're a team of 5, hopefully soon 6, because we're really busy.
Right.
And we work with a whole range of clients through from sort of SMEs to some really big corporate clients and retailers that you will have heard of, covering a real wide range of employment law stuff. So absence management, employment tribunal claims, TUPE transfer stuff, contracts, handbooks, all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
And I'm also the HR director at the firm too, which is also fun.
But that keeps you busy.
Yes.
How does it help then being a HR director as well as being an employment lawyer? What aspects are you going to get from both?
I guess it's useful for me to see our internal stuff and our people doing the things that they do and trying to support them on the things that they need help with. I probably could devote more time to it, if I'm really honest, because the client-facing stuff is busy at the minute. But it's just great to kind of live that experience within the business. I'm also married to a head of HR too, so I get the full picture.
Great.
Shall we say.
Interesting dinner conversations.
Absolutely. So interesting.
Yeah. Bit of compare and contrast. What have you had today? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that's such a small team then, 5 people into 6 then?
Yeah. So it's kind of growing. The firm itself is about 60 people at Actons. The team's, hopefully going to be 6 soon.
Yeah.
And we've got a good range of experience and different kind of skill sets within that. And we've been together a long time. So most of the team have been with us at least sort of 7 years plus.
Right.
So we're kind of well established and we, people seem to stick around.
Yeah.
So it's good.
It's good. No, definitely. What are you finding then? You're saying you're really busy. What are you finding that's the common kind of issues you're dealing with at the minute?
So obviously you can't really talk about employment law without mentioning the Employment Rights Act at the minute. And that is, I think, starting to drive activity. So people are starting to plan for those things. Obviously April this year just gone. 26 has seen some of that stuff introduced. But it's interesting. We haven't seen that much work that's specifically, I think, as a result of the ERA.
Okay.
It's tended to be just an increase in employment tribunal claims.
Right.
So if you look at all the statistics out there, the tribunal system releases those on a delay. So they're always a bit old. Yeah. But they've gone up massively. So, many percentage increase in tribunal claims. We're seeing that in our client base. So some of our bigger clients who would have some tribunal claims, because that's what happens in the course of business, have got more than usual. Yeah. And clients that wouldn't usually get them have them too. And there's lots of different reasons for that, which we can maybe chat about. But that's driving it. And I think employers are then taking advice. More of the time because they realize that there's a risk that they're going to get a claim. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we've seen it recently where I'm working currently. I've been there for nearly 5 years and we've now had 2 ET1s and we're like, where have they come from? And our grievances have gone through the roof. Where do you think that stemmed from then?
Yeah, so I've got quite a few theories. One of them is AI.
Yes.
So, and that's AI helping employees draft grievances and draft claims. Right. And where there's more grievances, there tends to be more claims. Yeah. Also AI advising employees, essentially. And I use the word advising carefully because it's not usually right.
Yeah.
But people are more aware of their rights, I think, as a result of that. Also, the ERA has kind of brought employment law and employment rights into focus a bit more. So I think employees are thinking about that. The job market, though, is really what I think is driving more claims.
Right.
And by that, I mean, post-COVID, immediately after COVID, there was, well, I think we thought there would be people out of work.
Yeah.
Actually, the job market was pretty good.
Yeah.
There was a salary kind of bubble.
Yeah.
Lots of increases in salary. If you got dismissed or you resigned, you probably walked into another job pretty quickly, often on more money.
Yeah.
And there weren't that many claims at that point.
Yeah.
The job market is just tougher now. So again, you see the news, the stats, all that stuff suggests that actually there's a lot of unemployment. And I think a lot of people are basically that they've taken the view that they can't afford not to bring a claim. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think that people are out of work for a longer period of time, and they're then thinking, okay, well, I'm going to bring a claim where I might not have done had I walked into another job. One, because you know, a lot of people just can't be bothered.
Yeah.
And two, actually, they think I might get some money out of this.
Right.
So I think that's driving it.
Yeah.
And then some of the changes that are coming in the Employment Rights Act will actually make that worse.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be more claims overall.
Yeah.
But also people will have longer to bring claims. They're increasing that time limit from 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
Again, the government are saying, well, that'll be to help employees and employers resolve things.
Yeah.
My take is that it will just give more time for people to decide whether they're going to bring a claim or not.
Yeah.
So we might continue to see more.
Yeah. I'm really surprised with, I don't know, I think someone said to me the other day, tribunals are what, 2031 at the moment? So, I'm surprised that's not deterring people from actually kind of, you know, putting anything in.
So I have a theory on that. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We're seeing cases listed into 2030 for sure.
Right.
Often even just preliminary hearings. So the first bit where you have a hearing to talk about how we're going to run the case, the claim, can be into 2027, 2028.
Right.
Before anything happens. And my theory is AI related again.
Right.
So I've had a number of clients say to me, we're getting people that are bringing claims or raising grievances.
Yeah.
And they're saying, I've researched this. By that, they think AI has told them that they're going to get a load of money at the end.
Right.
So effectively they're saying, well, if I'm going to get £100,000, I'll wait 3 years because 33 grand a year is pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
And because AI has told them that that's what's going to happen, they're kind of believing it.
Yeah.
And therefore, where we could have maybe settled claims sensibly previously, it's less common. So we're seeing it being really difficult, despite those long delays, to persuade individuals to take money that is entirely reasonable to resolve a claim where they would have done before. So it's an interesting time.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, mind-blowing, hey? Bless you. So this podcast is all about people management.
Yeah.
The premise really is, I think, for all the years I've worked in HR, line managers have always been in the forefront of how can we upskill them? How can we make sure they deal with their issues? And I think I've not found a company yet where we've done it where it's really worked. Yep. You know, it's kind of, it gets put on the agenda and then back at the bottom of the agenda. So it's for maybe new line managers, you know, you're promoted because technically you're very good at your job. And then all of a sudden you're promoted and you get 5, 4, 30 people that you're managing.
Yep.
And it's probably one of the hardest things for you to be able to do. So it'd be really good, I suppose, to kind of get a bit of advice from you for line managers on things that they can do a little bit differently, if that's okay.
Yep.
What do you think is often misunderstood about employment law and what good people management looks like?
Yeah, interesting one. Well, I guess I'd start by saying it feels to me, so I talk a lot about training managers at the minute, and it feels to me like a time where it's more important than ever. And you're right, we've been talking about this for years, you know, managers are the front line and, you know, it's important and that kind of thing. But the way that the world is changing and the way that employment law is changing, for me, it's the priority at the minute for HR teams, or at least it should be. So I think the podcast that you're running is, it's a good timing from that perspective.
Yeah.
When it comes to employment law, I think sometimes it's a lack of understanding.
Right.
So sometimes it's as simple as managers just don't know that certain things exist or should be done a certain way. I think often employers kind of put employment law into place through policies, procedures, handbooks, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And often they're so long and boring that managers never want to read them. So they don't know.
Yeah.
And I think very often, actually, if a manager picked up the disciplinary policy or the performance management policy or the grievance policy and read it, they'd probably know what to do when someone raised a complaint or when they had a performance issue or so on. So although I think there's been quite a big push away from, there's too many policies and that kind of thing. I think if you get that right, that can be really powerful for managers, and avoid them having to come to HR all the time going, what do we do about this? What do we do about this? What do we do about this? So I think a lack of understanding is probably the case. And I think with all the changes that are coming, they're going to have to be upskilled on that knowledge in a new way, because there's certain things that just won't work anymore. So for me, it's them being aware enough to do some of it themselves, or at least spot issues. And if it's particularly complicated, then come to HR and go, do you know what, I could do with some support on this.
Yeah, I agree. I think if all the conversations that I have, they come to me, HR, quite a lot with things that I think, well, how do you not know how to do that, or how else can I support you? And to what you're saying, I think we recently revised, I don't know if I'm going to say this, we recently revised our absence sickness policy, which is now 13 pages long.
Okay.
And even I didn't want to read it.
Absolutely.
So I completely get what you're saying. I think my feedback was you need to strip it back because it's too long. So the easy option is to come to HR and what do I need to do? So when it comes to policies, how can you make that simpler, do you think?
So I think often my experience of seeing policies in the wild, as it were, is that it often depends on sectors. So obviously public sector tend to have longer policies, more kind of onerous on the employer. Even kind of quasi-public sector will still have some of that, education sector, that kind of thing. Often the employers that have kind of got this stuff right are a bit faster moving. They're tech companies, that kind of stuff. But in reality, all they're doing is ensuring that the legal compliance bit is there and not necessarily going beyond that. So I see a lot of policies, particularly disciplinary grievances, real basic stuff, where actually an employer's built in timelines that don't exist in the ACAS code or in any other part of employment law that mean that they have to do stuff in a certain way that actually isn't a legal requirement. It's just something they've imposed on themselves. And that removes flexibility and kind of puts them in breach of their own procedures before they even get started often. So I think stripping it back to, but as the point you were suggesting, to kind of the legal minimum, and adding some stuff in where you think it's appropriate for you and your culture, but keeping it as basic as possible, but still legally compliant is always the way to go. And I think getting it, lawyers in particular can produce policies, procedures. They'll tend to be quite legalistic. I've been asked a couple of times by clients to write them a kind of handbook of policies that one particular client said, we want it to sound like us. And I was kind of flattered that they thought I could do that. And we've been working together for quite a while. I understood their business. But I said, well, that's a very expensive way of doing it. And they were like, well, that's fine. We want it to sound like us. We think you know us. And we don't want it as a kind of template legalistic document that's off the shelf. And that makes sense to me too, in terms of people understanding and being bothered to read it. If they think, this feels like us and our workplace, then I think that's important too. But it takes time and effort to create those rather than just go, well, we've downloaded this template, or had this from the lawyers, it's legally compliant, let's just fire it out there.
No, absolutely.
So I think you can shape your culture a bit with those kind of things too.
What's your view about coming away from policies as such and being so rigid and having more conversations and kind of resolving stuff more informally?
I think it's a good idea. And I've been talking a lot about grievances and AI grievances and that kind of thing recently. And my kind of key message there is, if you get a 50-page AI grievance, talk to your employee. You may not be able to ignore that altogether, but the chances are, if you sit down with them or say, have another go, it doesn't quite sound like you. We're wondering, like, that you might have even used AI on this. We'd like to hear from you in your own words. You can cut through that and actually get to the heart of the issue more easily. So I think there is, and particularly for managers, because of the kind of environment in which they're operating, understandably, to a certain extent, there's a fear about having conversations about certain things. And I think they need to be encouraged to do that. They need to be backed by more senior people and HR teams and whatever else to have those discussions. And I think if things can be resolved informally without having to go through a formal process, then it's better. And things like, even the legal side, the ACAS code on grievances suggests that you informally resolve stuff before you go through a process. And a lot of the management training I do in those areas is actually encouraging managers to step back and go, is this the best way of dealing with it? I understand that there's a formal grievance process, but maybe there are other ways we could look at to resolve this, rather than immediately just jumping in. Well, we've got to follow this process, and we're going to take someone through a procedure that probably isn't going to resolve it. Whereas like actually the grievance process is not going to resolve things most of the time. So actually looking at other informal ways of doing stuff makes sense.
What do you think of some of the kind of myths, I suppose, that line managers might have that prevents them from having those conversations? Where's the fear coming from?
I think part of the fear probably is getting sued. And I think that's unfortunate because in some ways, given what we've just said about employment tribunals, it's a reality. And certainly I've come across managers who are thinking, I don't want to be in that environment. I don't want to have that conversation because there's a risk here. But I think it comes with the badge. And actually, you kind of have to be prepared to take on that responsibility if you're going to take on that role. So I think that's probably some of it. I think probably some of it is a lack of training and understanding and skill and all the stuff that we've been talking about as well. Because if you don't feel capable of having those discussions, it's going to be very, very scary to do it, isn't it? But if you understand how it's supposed to go, you've got a better chance of it going well. So I think that's part of it. And I think also, going back to the AI thing, I think managers probably perceive employees to be better informed than they ever have been.
It's true.
And therefore there's a kind of rebalancing of kind of the knowledge levels, where a manager might have known a bit more about how to do something or what's right or wrong or that kind of thing. And actually a lot of employees are fully informed as to how these things should work now.
No, absolutely.
Which is not bad necessarily.
No, I think it's good they are informed, but I suppose, like you said, it's that balance of that line manager also being aware of how things work and what to say and what the policies or legalities of what it is they need to do. I had a scenario a couple of weeks ago, actually, where a manager, we were doing some coaching, and she had an issue with an individual who basically walked out. A conversation had been had. She wasn't very happy. And I said, well, how did you deal with that? And she's like, well, I tried to. And then she said that she'd been victimized and discriminated.
Okay.
I said, okay, so what did you do? She said, nothing. I said, what do you mean nothing? She said, I didn't know what to say.
Okay.
So it was a conversation that just wasn't had. And I said, what was it? And she said, I didn't know what to say. I was fearful on what she might say. I didn't know what she meant about victimization and discrimination. So she just completely avoided the conversation, which I said, how do you think that's left things now then? Which is not the ideal.
Agreed.
Agreed. So it's the confidence and that capability, isn't it, of knowing how can I have that conversation?
I think so.
Okay, so it'd be really good to kind of look at some everyday issues, if that's okay, a bit of insight from yourself on what we can do differently or what goes well. The first one is around difficult conversations. So my experience has always been that managers avoid them like the plague. Why, or what usually happens, do you think, when we avoid these conversations?
I think the issues get worse. And therefore the risk increases. So I think it's another one of those ones where you want managers to be brave enough to address them. And I suppose for them to be reassured that actually addressing them generally will work out better than leaving them. Because just leaving it to drift, performance is the key one that I see a lot on that front, where someone's underperforming. And the point where we get involved is usually when everyone's at the end of their tether, or the employees raise a grievance because they don't feel supported either. The manager wants the person gone. And then, the call to us is, we want you to help us get rid of this person out of our organization. And we'll say, okay, so if it's a performance issue, how long have you been performance managing them? And they'll be like, well, we haven't really.
No, we've not begun that.
Exactly. But they've been underperforming for about 2 years. And it's frustrating for us because we're like, well, the only way you're safely going to do this really is to start performance management, and that's going to take 3-6 months, whatever. And of course, by that point, the relationship may have been damaged beyond repair anyway, or the manager's so fed up they're not want to go through that process, and then we have to look at other options. I think in particular, that one's going to change too with the changes that are coming with unfair dismissal. So I think there's going to have to be much more focus on performance management and having those kind of difficult conversations early. Because there's only going to be a short period of time to address those in the hope that the person improves. And if they don't, if employers want to minimize the risk of unfair dismissal, they're going to have to make those decisions much more quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the classic managers don't want to have
a
difficult conversation, but actually, one, it minimizes risk, but two, often what we found is it improves things for the employee because often they won't even realize.
No.
And actually they go, oh, thank you. And if it's done in the right way, if it's done in a kind of, I would like to help you do better. To me, that's kind of encouraging for the person as well as addressing the underperformance. And it's more about, not you're rubbish, do better.
Yes.
But how can I help you do this better? Or how do we, support you in that? Or how do we make this work? Or is there something holding you back from doing that well? Because again, that's the other thing that we see a lot in terms of the complexities of those kind of conversations, is that actually there's something else going on. So an employee's got a difficult situation at home, or there's a health issue that we didn't know about that's actually contributing to something, or that kind of thing. And it isn't until you have that slightly awkward conversation that you discover that and you think, oh, okay, well, we can help with that.
I think it's about that, having an effective conversation and rather a vague one, isn't it, to kind of get to the root cause of actually what's happening here. But I think at the same time, some people are better at that than others. And you can train a certain amount of that, I guess. But there will be people that are just naturally better people managers. 100%.
And that's more on the employer, I think, to get right. And I think you said, towards the beginning, people are promoted into roles because they're good at the job, not necessarily because they're good people managers. And I still think that's happening. And law is one of the classic situations. Oh, well, they're good with clients and they've, billed a lot and all that kind of thing. Let's make them a manager of a team. Well, that might not be the best thing.
No, absolutely. I think one of the key things for me is remembering human to human. It's getting to know your team, regular one-to-ones, catch-ups, or even just talking to them on the job. So you actually can recognise when there is a concern, and actually you then know, well, what's the best way for me to approach you and have that conversation? I think a lot of managers forget that. It's like, I'm a manager now, I can't speak to you as if I'm a human. Where actually human to human is, when something's not right with somebody, or you can feel the dynamics changed, or they're acting differently, and that's a good point to say, is everything okay?
Absolutely.
Which I think they fundamentally forget. Strangely enough. It's a bit random. So you talked about performance management. I think of all my career in HR, no one ever wants to performance manage anybody or use anything to kind of say there's a problem. They like to moan about it for months and months, and actually you could have already started that process, couldn't you, and be wherever you needed to be. So what do they often get wrong? So apart from not having that conversation, what other aspects of performance management do managers often get wrong?
So I think, I don't necessarily know that I would pin it on managers.
Okay.
So let's big up the managers to a certain extent. I think an employer should have some sort of performance management process or culture of that. And that, when it comes to my bit, the kind of legal compliance bit, when it comes to performance management, is very much a procedural thing. But it's actually quite simple. But it isn't something that people want to do. I agree with you. And, I think it's going to be an interesting shift with the Employment Rights Act stuff, because I think it's going to have to happen more. But people are not used to doing it. Because they don't. And they've got this 2-year mark for unfair dismissal, and it doesn't really matter. And managers, one of the things they are going to have to do is shift out of the mindset of, well, we've got 2 years to work out whether this is going to work or not, because it'll be 6 months. But in terms of the process itself, what I think tends to happen is it's not identified as an underperformance issue. So the person often is just blindly performing badly without really even knowing. And the manager won't have that conversation, as we were saying. But there's also no process put in place for helping the person improve. And again, an employment tribunal, if we're eventually dismissing somebody for underperformance, is going to expect to see that we told the person what was wrong, that we showed them what we wanted them to achieve, that we provided them with support in order to help them achieve that, be it training, mentoring, extra support, shadowing somebody, whatever it is, that we warned them that it still wasn't okay. And effectively, we repeated that process probably 2 or 3 times over an extended period of time, gave them a chance. And I think, therefore, if managers don't realise that's what they're supposed to be doing, it's often difficult for them to be doing that. And I think the kind of employers that I've seen do that well don't necessarily have it built into a probation period, don't necessarily have it, in a formal document, but have this culture of feedback and effectively people telling, more junior people in the organization that they're responsible for, this is how you do better.
Yeah.
And it just works throughout the organization at all levels, regardless of what amount of time you've been with the employer. And I think that's one of the big things that is quite an interesting debate at the minute around probation periods and the changes that are coming, where some employers are just saying, we're not going to have them.
No probation?
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
we want to just embed a culture of performance management.
Yeah.
And it won't matter what stage you're at.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the first 6 months or 5 years on.
Yeah.
We will do this well.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because a lot of people are going, no, we're going to make sure that people are out before 6 months, if they're not good enough. But I think there's certainly a number of people, directors, that are going, no, this is about being fair to everybody, embedding this culture of good, high performance, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And just doing this stuff well all the time. Yeah. Not just, well, they're a new starter, therefore we must focus on them and make it work there. So it's an interesting time on that, I think.
So for the listener, hopefully they do know about this, but for some of the viewers and listeners, can you explain what the change is then with the unfair dismissal?
Yeah, so there was just last week, so that's what the end of May 26, they released regulations which will bring into force the changes that are in the Employment Rights Act. So there's lots of kind of extra detail being put in place over time. This is one of the phased introductions. And from the 1st of January 2027, you'll only need to have 6 months service or employment with an employer to have protection from unfair dismissal. At the minute, it's 2 years, and it has been for quite some time. Yeah. And many managers are in that mindset of, well, we've got 2 years to work this out. So it's going to be quite a big shift. The government's own estimation that they released in the kind of impact assessment this week just gone was that it will open up unfair dismissal protection to an extra 6.3 million people.
Wow.
And bearing in mind what we just said about the tribunal system, that's big. And it's going to definitely force employers and managers to get to grips with performance management earlier in the kind of employment process. It's going to encourage people to, I think, get recruitment better, more rigorous in terms of getting the right people in. And to be honest, I think it's already starting to put people off recruiting. Yeah. Which, of course, I'm sure was an unintended consequence of the change. But it has brought probation periods into focus in a really new way, because people didn't really bother with them that much properly, previously. No. They would pass and someone would go, well, did I pass my probation or not? Yeah. And they didn't really have any legal standing anyway. Yeah. But often they were 6 months. Yeah. And if you let somebody get to their 6 month probation period now and then dismiss at that point, they will have unfair dismissal rights. Yeah. So a lot of employers are moving it to an earlier date, 3 months. Yeah. I guess the most common I've probably seen is 3 months with a month or two extension, which gets you to 5 and you're probably okay. But I think the challenge is managers then getting on top of performance in 3 months is actually quite difficult for a new starter. Yeah. So it's going to be a mindset shift for managers for sure.
So we talked about this most recently around, I think actually my boss was asking me and my counterpart. So from a probation point of view, what's the structure you have? And in all honesty, I think if someone's performing well, it's kind of just happens in the night. There's no formal conversations, nothing happens. Okay, so if they're not, I said, well, that's probably when we do hear about it. And then we start a formal process. Yeah. Do you think either way then, whether it's successful or unsuccessful, you should always have a process in place for probation?
Yeah, I think unless you are one of the kind of organisations that I mentioned earlier that's doing away with it altogether, then I do think you should. And I think when you are putting somebody on probation, and we can discuss whether that's a nice concept in itself, a lot of people again are pushing back against that, saying it sounds like you just come out of prison, which isn't the best way of describing how you want to treat your new starter that you've just invested a lot in recruiting. But I think just hearing that you've done well and that you've passed your probation actually is a positive thing for most people.
People like to know that,
because the employee themselves is thinking, oh gosh, I'm on probation, I hope this is going to be okay. And the employer's probably not even thinking about it, particularly when it is going well. They're probably thinking, well, great, they're good. Oh yes, we must remember to, to tell them that. Yeah. So I think it's a marker either way for employers. I just think there needs to be more than just that one meeting where you go pass or fail.
Yeah. Again, it's those regular check-ins, isn't it? Because there's that settling in period, which, not like you said, takes longer than 3 months anyway. But expectation of the role, who, your full induction needs to be taken into account. And it's not just a one-stop shop, isn't it? It's like 3 months, that's it. You must be fine and carry on. It's the longevity.
Well, and I think the induction, onboarding, whatever you want to call it, I think is increasingly important too, because you need to be setting people up to succeed.
Yeah.
And I think it's not just a case of, oh, well, they'll eventually learn what to do, because we've got ages, we're not going to really do anything about it. I think that, again, that's going to be much more intense and focused, hopefully, because otherwise, it's not going to work well.
Yeah. And as you say about the recruitment process, I think conversations I've had with fellow HR professionals was, and it'd be interesting to get your view on this, there's a nervousness about recruiting now for fixed term contracts with the unfair dismissal.
Yep.
Where's the risk there then? What's the elements that might make them think differently?
So I think you're right. I think there was a study came out recently, it might have been KPMG and the REC that produced the report, which showed that there was more flexible resource, as in agency workers, that kind of thing, being recruited into business than there were permanent roles. And that had kind of, that balance had shifted for the first time. I think there's a lot of reasons, the more kind of general economic concerns around, how's the economy in the UK doing, the wider kind of geopolitical stuff, the world's very uncertain, who knows what's going to happen out of America or the Middle East or that kind of thing. And that is having an impact on employers, and they're kind of nervous about their own businesses. And I think a lot of the Employment Rights Act changes are causing employers to think twice at least about whether they need permanent bodies in their business, essentially. And therefore, I think it probably is an opportunity for some of the agencies and, people who supply temporary workers and that kind of thing, because it's a much more flexible resource for employers. We act for a number of the big agencies, and they are certainly very busy at the minute. They're worried about the changes that are coming in the Employment Rights Act around guaranteed hours and agency workers and that kind of thing, because that has the potential to really damage that sector. To be blunt about it, in my view. But I certainly think a lot of employers are thinking, do we actually need that additional cost in our business? Do we need that resource? Are we prepared to take the risk? Because employment tribunal claims are up, and because national insurance costs more, and wages are high, and all those things. Sick pay kicks in from day one, and all these things combined, I describe it as a bit of a perfect storm. And I think it is difficult for employers. Whatever you think about the theory behind improving workers' rights, and I get that, all of this at once is having an impact on employers for sure. So when it comes to performance then, what would you say are the key principles that a line manager should follow if you've got someone who's underperforming? Tell them about it. Good start. have that conversation. Ensure that you've got support in place to help them improve. And then measure that improvement. And that can be difficult sometimes, where it's difficult to measure performance. Outputs, is key. But as best you can, setting targets that are realistic and achievable if they do what they need to do. And then review that again, and keep it going. The hope being that the person will respond well to that and improve. And of course, I see the worst of that very often, because it's not situations that have improved, but it must happen. Actually, with the right support, people do get better.
I think with line managers, it's the time it takes. So we always say to them, this takes so long, is there another way that we can get rid of them? It's like, well, no, you need to be fair, with the person and give them an opportunity to improve. But I think that's always a thing that comes up to me, is it just takes so long for us to do it. But the amount of time you're moaning about it, you could have already been a bit halfway through the process.
Well, absolutely. And I think also though, for managers, there's an organizational structure thing, or however you want to describe it. That's less my area. But if managers don't have enough time to manage, and they don't have the time to devote to supporting the people in their team to do well, then it seems to me there's something wrong. With my team, I don't have formal adjustments to targets and performance things or whatever, but there is an acknowledgement that I am managing people. And if they are successful, then I am managing well, and I am successful. And yes, I have personal things that I need to achieve too, but that's an important part of the role. And I think sometimes that's missed. Not only are managers not trained properly or promoted into roles that they're not necessarily that skilled for, but actually they're not given the time and the space to actually manage and given credit for that a lot of the time.
No, it's true. Very true. That brings us to the end of part 1 with Nic Elliott. I really hope this episode has helped you think about why employment law is becoming much more of an everyday line manager issue, and why early conversations, simple policies and practical confidence can make such a difference. In part 2, Nic and I move into absence management, occupational health, return to work conversations, and some of the common mistakes managers and employers can make when someone is off sick. I'll pop Nic's contact details and any useful links in the show notes so you can connect with him and find out more. You'll also find my details there too, including my LinkedIn and the People Expert, where I share practical HR, coaching, mediation and leadership support for managers and organisations. If this episode has been useful, please like, follow, subscribe and share it with someone who manages people. That small action makes a big difference. And remember, being a great people manager is not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to listen, learn, and support the people around you. Thank you for listening to The Practical People Manager.